To put it mildly, things have not been going well in the British Columbia provincial election for Premier David Eby and his BC NDP party. They have no real accomplishments to run on. Everything has gotten worse since the NDP took power in 2017. They have tons of scandals, including crack pipe vending machines and rampant anti Semitism, and the BC Conservatives are very much on the ascent in the polls. So, the BC NDP's new strategy is saying that John Rustad's a career politician or something. I don't get it. We have a massive opioid crisis in BC. We are the capital of the opioid crisis in North America. And yet, we have the BC NDP thinking that a bunch of voters are going to reject the Conservatives and come back home to the BC NDP because John Rustad has been in office for a while. Who cares? David Eby himself is a professional useless person. He's never had a real job in his life. He's been an activist, and he still is an activist. He is the protester in the premier's office. The man would be more comfortable at a Columbia University occupation by all the Palestinian crazies than he would be at a business meeting. He is a terrible leader. And now the idea that because he's been in elected office less time than John Rustad, that makes him better is utterly pathetic. I want to get into this clip right here that the NDP posted themselves. This is their new ad. It's horribly underwhelming. But before I do that, I just quickly want to plug the fact that in Abbotsford South here, we are holding a fundraiser on September 10th. 7 p.m. at the Greek Islands restaurant. I have tickets available in the description below. I'll be at that event if you guys want to come by and say hi. We need to do as much fundraising as possible to ensure that we can beat the BC NDP. If you can't show up to it, you can still donate to the BC Conservatives for Abbotsford South. We're going to try and take in as much money as we can and distribute cash to the ridings that need it, that we can oust NDP incumbents in. Everything's going very well in Abbotsford South, but we basically are just the distribution point for funds for the entire Fraser Valley. So if you want to come and say hi, show up to the Abbotsford South fundraiser. You don't have to be in the riding to show up and, hang out and whatnot. Just make sure you buy a ticket. But without further ado, let's get into this BC NDP ad. So it says up here, John Rustad is not new to politics. He is a career politician with a 20-year record of costing you more. That's a risk you can't afford. It's so weak immediately. This is one of the weakest headers I've ever seen to an ad attacking the other leader of your opposition. It just says, basically, he's been in politics for a while. You can't take that risk. We have people dying in the streets. People can't afford homes. A home is like $1.3 million on average in British Columbia. And you're going to look at me and say, John Rustad's a big risk because, I don't know, I guess he was in favor of tolls at one point, something that's not even that bad of an idea when you're trying to bring in money into the provincial coffers without just raising income taxes. But yeah, this is just pathetic and weak. But let's get to the video right here. It's even worse when they try and make this sort of personal appeal where they have the average Joe sitting there and telling you that John Rustad is just not a good guy.
John Rustad came from the BC Liberal Party and of course now BC United Party. These were times when people had to pay a toll to come in from Surrey, to come to Vancouver.
I know John Rustad.
People could afford to pay a toll back in the day. That's really what that tells me. People used to be able to afford to pay something like a toll. People can't afford potatoes now. Just pointing it out to you. Who cares? Oh, you can't pay a toll. What an indignity that you had to pay a toll to get on some faster roads. Okay, I don't really see what the point here is when, again, people can't afford their rent, groceries, and taxes have never been higher. And you're going to look down your nose at John Rustad when he was a Liberal MLA being in favor of tolls.
Comes from the old BC Liberal elite. So I'm assuming it will be a very developer focused. We'll get these luxury 1-bedroom condos everywhere made to sell to investors and not for families to live in.
Oh my goodness, it's such a bad ad. It's just bad. I don't know who this is meant to appeal to. That last guy saying, well, John Rustad, I think he's going to be very developers focused. This is just really socialists talking. That you're scared of the fact that John Rustad might make it easier for developers to build buildings. Well, guess what? David Eby's approach of not building anything hasn't been working. So maybe we should try and cut taxes and make it easier for developers to actually build things. Environmental regulations are actually the secret biggest issue right now with building permits in British Columbia. It takes an average of 3 years to get a building permit approved because of just all the hoops and gyrations you have to jump through, all of the extra taxes on you building anything, all the idle time waiting for inspectors to look over your foundations and whatnot, and all of the environmental checks that make it take forever to build something. That adds cost. And now the NDP, they want to put it in place like rent controls and all of these other supply controls to make it so that a small group of people who are having a hard time getting a home can get that home, while everyone else has to suffer even more. Every time you put price controls into place, it benefits a select few and hurts everybody else. But that's the NDP solution to everything. How about we sacrifice 3 people to benefit 1 person and then hope that 1 person keeps voting for us to keep us in power? It's absolutely pathetic. And just, I don't think this is actually going to help them at all. I don't see where the attack line is here that's actually going to make a middle class person who's struggling say, driving home late at night on election day, I could just go home, pop on a movie, but dang it, John Rustad's a career politician, so I'm going to pull over and vote for David Eby. No, you're not. That's not a person who's going to vote for the NDP. John Horgan, his big, sorry, still a little bit sick. John Horgan is what I would call like a blue collar or a blue NDP. I disagree with him on pretty much every policy still, but he has that feel of a blue NDP, a little bit more of a man's man, and he could get small business owners, tradespeople, construction workers to come and vote for him. David Eby can't. The man just comes off like a peevish cocktail party circuit politician. He is an activist lawyer. He cannot connect at all with people who actually work hard jobs. And that is a massive amount of people living in British Columbia. And the entire equation of how people are going to vote is completely upended. I actually think that the polls are underestimating how many people are going to show up and vote for the Conservatives, because there's a certain select type of person who will pick up a phone and do a poll. Those don't tend to be plumbers. It tends to skew more to downtown office workers, who are more likely to vote NDP than Conservative. And even in these polls, the Conservatives are still winning. I actually just want to pull this up on screen. Sharia Teest even ballparked this race, and he currently has, with the new polls taken into account, the Conservatives winning a majority by a couple of seats. I think that can expand a little bit more into the future. But the thing is that the Conservatives are going to probably have a massively bigger turnout than the NDP, even if we are to believe the polling numbers. And it's not that you shouldn't believe the polling numbers, it's just that they can be sometimes a little bit flawed. There's a lot of low propensity voters that are going to come out for the Conservatives. I just yesterday was talking to a restaurant owner who says that their father has never voted in his entire life, but he's going to vote in this election because he hates David Eby, because David Eby is so bad, he is willing to vote even though he doesn't really believe voting usually works. He's willing to do it this time. There's a lot of people who work trades jobs, who work sort of jobs where at the end of the day, they're too tired to vote. They don't care. They're definitely voting. They're voting early, or they're going to vote in the morning or after work. They will show up for John Rustad. Even David Eby's base, are they going to show up to vote for David Eby to defend him? Because it's not like they're voting because things are getting so much better. We got to protect what the great work David Eby's doing. He's not doing anything good. All they have is that big, scary Conservatives might win if you don't vote for David Eby. Also, here's some crack. It's a loser narrative. And election campaigns very much are about narratives. In 2015, Stephen Harper lost because sorry about this. Frankly, he had a bad narrative. Even though Stephen Harper is miles better of a prime minister than Justin Trudeau, his narrative was vote for me because Justin Trudeau isn't good, or Thomas Mulcair isn't good. Justin Trudeau had sunny ways, which, as silly and simplistic as it is, that's a good narrative. I'm a ray of sunshine here to brighten things up in Canada. Things are going to get better. We're going to have more momentum in the economy because we're going to make investments from the governmental level, which doesn't work. But to the average voter, well, that sounds better than Stephen Harper there sort of saying, well, we've been accomplishing good work and you should vote for us because Justin Trudeau is just not ready. Bad narrative. In this election, in 2024 in British Columbia, The change narrative is on the side of the Conservatives, that we can stop doing things as business as usual in BC. We can stop with these far left woke policies and get back to letting you live your life and getting the government to leave you alone, to stop handing out safe supply drugs, to stop taxing you so much, to actually arrest criminals, all of this other stuff. That is more compelling than let's just keep the money flowing into these failed programs because, you know, it would be rude not to, which is effectively what David Eby's saying. Anyways, but that should be it for me today, guys. I'll have more BC election updates as I'm going here. Obviously, I'm working for the BC Conservatives, trying to make sure we get rid of the NDP here. So again, if you're anywhere close to Abbotsford, think about coming to the fundraiser on September 10th. The link for the tickets is in the description of this video below. Come and hang out. It helps us beat the NDP. You can get, you know, grab some Greek food or whatever, all that stuff. And again, just donate to the BC Conservatives if you can't show up to that fundraiser, and make sure to, I guess, you know, click the links in the description below if you want to support the show and you don't live in BC. There's the Give, Send, Go legal fundraiser. You can follow me on X. I'm very easy to find out there. And then you can even go to my personal website, wyattclaypool.com. If you want to be on my organizing list, I can give out recommendations for different nomination races around the country, how I'd vote in them, all that stuff. There's a nomination currently going on in Abbotsford, which as I get to know what's going on in it more, I'll be giving out recommendations on who I think would be a good replacement candidate for Ed Fast in the area. If you know a lot about that race, email me at wyatt@wyattclaypool.com. All those things, you know, push the buttons in the description below, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm bad at promoting it, but, you know, forgive me for that. See you guys later. We're going to win. We just got to focus on doing what's actually useful and not farting around too much in BC, like, you know, fighting social media battles. It's fun, but eventually you got to get to the doors and you got to talk to the average person who doesn't care about X.